of course, coming to this now, more than 4,000 bodies lay unclaimed across the country's mortuaries, and some even dating back as far back as 2017. But the Democratic Alliance is now calling for government to urgently address this issue. So let's get more clarity. The party's Madeleine Hicklin joins me right now to take this conversation forward. And Madeleine, thank you so much for your time. A very warm good morning to you. I can't fathom, a body laying in a mortuary unclaimed, as far back as 2017. Do we understand some of the reasons behind why there's still such a backlog with so many bodies in our mortuaries?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, we don't. There is no clarity that has been given to us as to why bodies have been lying unclaimed. What we do know is that a number of people who have not claimed their relatives either don't know that their relatives are missing because people have come into South Africa potentially illegally, or are lying unaware that or bodies are lying in mortuaries and families are unaware that their loved ones have gone missing. I received a report this morning of a young man who disappeared 3 years ago, and his family approached the Department of Health, amongst others, to try and find out where this young person was. And unfortunately, he had died. His body lay in the mortuary for a year, and then they allegedly buried him, but they cannot find his remains, nor can they point out where he was buried to the family. The government is obliged after 7 days to actually bury people, give them a pauper's burial if their bodies are not claimed, because the mortuaries cannot cope with the number of people who are passing. And what do you do with those remains?
Madeleine, when it comes to unclaimed bodies in mortuaries, does the state know the identity of these deceased individuals themselves? Does the state have information to say these are their names, this perhaps is their ID number, for instance, this is perhaps where they come from, or do they lie with bodies potentially which they themselves at the state have no idea who this person could be?
Very often, there are bodies that are lying in a mortuary and the state has no idea who they are. We were told that the Department of Home Affairs and our Minister of Police, Becky Cele, said that they were going to be using a biometric system to identify people in terms of fingerprints and or other DNA. But as you know, the DNA backlog is ridiculous in South Africa. And so bodies can lie unclaimed, and forensic pathology services do not have the ability to cope with the number of forensic pathology investigations that they have to do on a regular basis. So the biometric system of identification of bodies cannot happen.
Yeah.
We just don't have the expertise and or the manpower to do it. So if you don't have the expertise and the manpower, if a body is brought into a mortuary, then the body is going to lie there unidentified because we don't have the means with which to identify them. And if you take the Albert Street fire, for example, that happened in Marshalltown, that tragic incident where 77 people lost their lives in a building,
right.
Only 30 of the bodies were able to be positively identified. 44 bodies are still unaccounted for. They are unidentified, whether it is because their remains were so badly burned or whether it is because nobody came to claim those remains. Remains a mystery.
Yeah. Also, can I ask you this? What are we hearing about some of the extortion claims that some family members are being made or forced to pay money just to receive the remains of their loved ones?
This is what we are trying to investigate as the Democratic Alliance. We've had a number of people call in to us and say to us, we have been asked to pay 700 Rand, A, for the autopsy to be done, and B, for us to collect the remains. This is highly corrupt and illegal. Forensic pathology services conduct autopsies and hand over the remains of deceased persons at no cost. These are services conducted by the relevant provincial and national departments of health at no cost. So anyone who is trying to extort 700 Rand from you to collect the remains of your loved one is a racketeer. It's plain and simple that. That is corruption, that is extortion. It should not be allowed to happen. And if anybody does have that, they must contact us and we will prosecute them if we can get hold of them.
Because you do mention that you're still investigating more cases, more calls that you're receiving around this matter. And my last question to you, if I may, please. I mean, the amount of pressure that mortuaries lie under. I understand that from the 4,000 unclaimed bodies, 1,500 are in KwaZulu-Natal. The figure in Gauteng standing at 1,000. We're currently going through different stages of load shedding. I mean, how are mortuaries handling the amount of, remains that are unclaimed during these stages of, no electricity or at least load shedding?
With extreme difficulty.
Yeah.
What we are finding, what we are being told is that bodies are being packed with bags of ice to try and keep them cold, because very few mortuaries actually have generators, and if they have generators, they don't have diesel to run those generators. So part of my appeal, or part of my demand, not so much an appeal, is that not only are mortuaries equipped with generators, but that they are equipped with generators and diesel to run those generators so that the fridges can remain cold. What do you do if you have bodies in a fridge and you cannot keep those fridges cold? And that is what we are saying, is if you are going to persist with the stage 6 load shedding because the government is unable, unwilling to address the load shedding issues that is crippling this country, you have to do something to ensure that the mortuaries can keep the bodies cold enough within their fridges. And that is the responsibility of Khosiyanso Ramakgopa, the Minister of Electricity.
A crisis to say the least. Madeleine Hicklin, thank you so much for joining us right here.